Welcome back to Zodiac Talks Tarot, the little studio where we treat star maps like field notes and human behavior like a living novel. I'm your longtime researcher, equal parts astrologer, psychologist, and slightly insomniac storyteller, checking the constellations for peer review and inviting your intuition to speak up without raising its voice. And today's focus is simple and crackling. Aries, your millionaire era begins October 17th to 19th, 2025, a 3-day corridor where your fire stops, pacing the hallway and finally walks through the door. Let's name the feeling first. That low electrical hum under your skin isn't anxiety, it's ignition. The moment a match realizes it was never supposed to be a paperweight. For weeks you've been living between chapters, sharpened by the pause. And now the cosmos slides 3 invitations across the table, not a trumpet blast, more like your name spoken in the right room at the right time. In astrological terms, Mars, your ruler, steadies the helm and points your drive toward design instead of distraction. If you've been swinging a sword at fog, this is the week the blade becomes a blueprint. Psychologically, we'd call it an internal locus of control snapping back into place. You stop waiting for proof and start remembering you're the author, not a side character with good cardio. And because I'm obliged to be practical even when poetic, hear this: October 17th brings a quiet infrastructural shift, the kind that doesn't trend online but changes the rent, a slow, confident exhale across money, home, or partnership that says, we can move forward now. It may look like a message returned, a door you assumed was shut clicking open, an option you shelved resurrecting with better terms. From a Buddhist lens, this is right effort, no grasping, no frantic hustle, just clean action aligned with what's true. Then October 18th tilts the mirror toward connection, not as spectacle but as accuracy. Someone enters or re-enters with a rhythm that complements yours. A presence that doesn't tame your flame but sits beside it the way a good mentor, collaborator, or lover does, unruffled and precise. The psychology here is attachment security meeting adult discernment, intimacy without theater, and yes, you can keep your independence. Think of it as a tandem skydive where you still pull the cord. Finally, October 19th turns up the dimmer from the inside. Self-worth stops wearing a costume and arrives as baseline tone. You speak more directly, choose more cleanly, and the world responds as if it was waiting for you to stop asking for permission you never needed. If you want a monkeyish translation, the mind loosens its grasp and the world proves it was never the enemy. If you want a novelist's version, the protagonist realizes the door was unlocked and laughs at how dramatic the hallway felt. None of this demands speed. Aries already owns the patent on speed. It asks for presence, for that 5-minute morning ritual where you inhabit the life you're building instead of interrogating it, breathing like someone who trusts their footing. So, set one clear intention, answer one avoided message, sketch one bold outline, and let your energy, not your volume, carry the room. Wealth here is alignment first, numbers second. And alignment is simply your nature without the apology. If a joke helps the medicine go down, try this. You can still be the first one out the door, just make sure it's the right door. The universe hates doing U-turns as much as you do. Let's start at the beginning of this chapter, October 17th, a date that doesn't roar but hums. You may not see fireworks, and there will be no trumpet blowing angels announcing a life upgrade. But if you pay attention, you'll feel a quiet click inside you, a kind of sacred stability that finally replaces the slow, suffocating tension you've been carrying in your chest. Think of it as the universe adjusting its furniture, making space for you to breathe again. Mars, your ruling planet, sharpens your focus, while Venus in Scorpio deepens your emotional awareness. Together they whisper a cosmic instruction that Aries rarely wants to hear: stop forcing, start aligning. The truth is, what you've been working toward, whether a personal goal, a creative project, or a long overdue conversation, was never stuck, it was simply waiting for its cue. The timing wasn't broken, your readiness was. And now, like a theater light rising before the first line is spoken, everything you've been preparing for starts to shimmer into form. Psychology has a term for this shift: regaining your internal locus of control. It's that glorious moment when you realize life isn't a movie happening to you, it's a production you've been directing all along. You stop blaming the lighting, the script, or the weather, and you pick up the pen again. In Buddhist philosophy, we'd call this right effort a kind of sacred productivity that doesn't come from panic or craving, but from clarity. Right effort isn't about hustling harder, it's about acting without resistance. It's the art of moving with the current instead of thrashing against it. And that's exactly what this period invites you to do: participate in your own flow, calmly, intelligently, without the exhausting drama of overexertion. Now, I know what you're thinking, Aries. But I like speed. Of course, you do. You practically invented the word. If impatience were an Olympic sport, you'd have more medals than Michael Phelps. But even fire needs rhythm, or it burns itself out. What if your next era isn't about sprinting but about sustained ignition, learning to be the flame that lasts, not just the spark that flashes? You're evolving from adrenaline junkie to energetic architect, channeling your passion with precision instead of impulse. That's what real millionaire energy looks like. Not the noisy buy more, hustle harder kind, but the quiet confidence that says, I trust the timing because I trust myself. True abundance doesn't arrive when you chase it down, it shows up when you've stopped running long enough to let it catch up. And then comes October 18th, the second current, and this one goes straight for the heart. If the 17th stabilized your ground, the 18th stirs your soul. Something or someone crosses your path, and the connection feels less like discovery and more like remembering. Maybe it's a new face with an old energy, or an old friend suddenly speaking your language again after years apart. Whatever form it takes, the moment feels strangely sacred, like déjà vu from another lifetime. Venus, still swimming through Scorpio's emotional depths, brings the kind of connection that doesn't perform, doesn't demand, doesn't rush, it simply exists, steady and honest. Here's the thing most people forget about Aries: beneath all that confidence and bravado lives a tender creature that feels everything. You hide it well, but it's there, the part of you that loves without caution, that protects what it loves like a fortress, that secretly aches to be seen for who you are, not just for what you do. October 18th brings that recognition. Someone finally looks past your armor and sees the heart beneath it, and the effect might catch you off guard. Because when you're used to being the strong one, the provider, the leader of the pack, being understood without explanation can feel as startling as it is healing. Now, allow me a small confession. Every Aries I've ever studied, from the battlefield strategist to the bohemian artist, carries this paradox: you crave independence but long to be witnessed. You'll never say it out loud, you've got a reputation to protect, but the truth is, you don't want to conquer alone. You want someone who can stand at your side, not in your shadow, someone who can handle your fire without flinching or trying to put it out. And that's the essence of what this cosmic alignment brings. Whether it's love, friendship, mentorship, or even reconciliation, the connection coming your way isn't here to complete you, it's here to remind you that you were never broken to begin with. Humor me for a moment: if love were a military exercise, you'd be both the drill sergeant and the recruit shouting orders at yourself to feel harder, commit faster, prove it louder. But the universe, in its infinite sense of irony, is sending you someone who doesn't respond to commands. They don't need to be conquered, they just need to be met. This isn't about intensity anymore, Aries, it's about intimacy. You're finally ready for the kind of connection that asks nothing of you except truth. It doesn't need fireworks, because the warmth itself is enough. So keep your heart unarmored. The world already has enough people pretending not to care, scrolling through life with half their soul on airplane mode. Be the one who does care, who shows up fully even when it's inconvenient. That's your real courage, the willingness to be seen in a world terrified of sincerity. Mars gives you drive, Venus gives you depth, and together they're teaching you the most underrated art form of all, balance. By the time the day closes, you might notice small but unmistakable signs of this new rhythm. A conversation that feels effortless where it used to be strained. A text that lands softer than expected. A sudden sense of peace where you used to anticipate conflict. These aren't coincidences, they're reconfirmations. Life isn't testing you anymore, it's aligning with you. And if you can stay still long enough to feel it, you'll realize that security and connection, those two ancient desires, aren't opposite poles. They're partners in the same dance. So, take a breath. Let go of the need to predict or perfect. The universe has already done the heavy lifting. All that's left is your presence, alert, steady, and a little amused by how everything makes sense once you stop fighting the rhythm. Aries, you don't need to chase this chapter. You only need to live it. Because when you do, the fire that built empires finally finds its home, not in conquest, but in connection, not in noise, but in knowing. October 19th arrives quietly, like the moment dawn touches the horizon, not with noise, but with certainty. This is the day your reflection finally looks back and recognizes you. The illusions fall away, the self-doubt dissolves, and for the first time in what feels like ages, you see not potential, but embodiment. Everything you've been building toward, every lesson, every heartbreak, every late-night negotiation with the universe, it all integrates here. Uranus, the planet of awakening, joins forces with the Sun, and together they illuminate the last unexamined corner of your identity. This is not a cosmic pep talk. It's an awakening disguised as simplicity. The universe isn't handing out gold stars, it's handing you a mirror and saying, own it. Let's be honest. You've spent years dimming your brilliance so others wouldn't squint. You've kept quiet to make people comfortable, pretending your light was optional. But self-worth is not a polite accessory, it's the spine of your entire existence. The chosen ones don't announce themselves with megaphones, they simply walk into a room, and the air changes. That's you now. You're no longer seeking validation because you finally understand that validation is a byproduct, not a prize. Your energy has matured from explosive fire to contained flame, steady, confident, purposeful. You've stopped performing confidence, and started being it. Psychologically, this is the moment self-esteem becomes self-concept. You're not telling yourself affirmations anymore, you're reliving them. You notice that people start respecting your boundaries without a single confrontation. You speak less, but your words land heavier. Opportunities that once required begging now show up with your name already on the invitation. It's not coincidence, it's coherence. When your inner world stabilizes, your outer reality can finally match it. The Buddhists call this karma ripening, and scientists would call it resonance. You can call it what it is, the physics of the spirit. In tarot language, this alignment echoes the Sun, the Empress, and the Queen of Pentacles archetypes of authority that radiate instead of chase. They don't hustle, they harmonize. They know that abundance doesn't arrive through pursuit, but through congruence. When you vibrate as someone who already belongs, life doesn't have to be convinced, it simply responds. That's what you're learning now. The magic isn't in getting what you want, it's in becoming the version of yourself who naturally attracts it. And yes, this might show up in visible ways. A promotion that feels overdue finally lands, a conversation about money flows smoothly instead of awkwardly, or a new opportunity seems to fall out of the sky at just the right moment. But beneath the success stories, the real transformation is invisible. You've reclaimed inner authority. You've stopped auditioning for your own life. Now let's talk about hustle, that beloved American religion. Everyone preaches it, few survive it. I'll tell you something, most motivational speakers 1T hustle is often just anxiety in gym clothes. It's what we do when we don't trust the timing. We push because we are terrified the universe forgot our address. But manifestation doesn't respond to proof, it responds to presence. You don't need to prove your worth to existence, existence already accepted your membership the day you were born. What's happening now is a paradigm shift from effort to alignment. Doing less is not laziness, it's precision. You'll start noticing that the right things come easier, that the right people arrive without your frantic scheduling, and that timing feels less like an obstacle and more like oxygen. You'll wonder why you ever believed stress was a sign of seriousness. Here's a small experiment to test this. Tomorrow morning, before the to-do list colonizes your mind, spend 5 quiet minutes remembering, not imagining, remembering the version of you who already has what you want. Feel the warmth of that reality in your body. Hear the silence of a life that flows. That's not fantasy, it's calibration. You're syncing your nervous system with the frequency of fulfillment. Gratitude, contrary to popular belief, isn't just good manners, it's a tuning fork. Every time you say thank you with presence, the universe hears I'm already home. And when you live from that vibration, the extraordinary stops being rare, it becomes your new normal. But here's the deeper layer, and it's the one most Aries struggle with: the psychology of receiving. You, my dear Aries, are a professional giver. You'll fight battles that aren't yours, build bridges no one asked for, and still pick up the check out of reflex. You give because you care, but also because control feels safer than trust. When you're the giver, you're the one steering the exchange. But when life tries to give to you, you freeze. It feels vulnerable. It feels like losing leverage. Somewhere along the way, you learned that love had to be earned through performance. That to deserve, you had to deliver. The universe is rewriting that script. This new chapter, the heart of your year of triumph 2025, is not about effort, it's about receptivity. It's about letting good things land without dissecting them. It's about saying yes without flinching. In this era, rest becomes an act of faith, joy becomes an act of service, and wealth becomes an act of trust. You're learning that rest doesn't mean stopping, it means sinking. You're learning that joy isn't frivolous, it's fuel. And you're learning that money, love, and purpose are not prizes for good behavior, they are reflections of spiritual alignment. The paradox is delicious. You've spent years pushing doors open, and now the door is simply ajar. No resistance, no drama. The universe is not testing you, it's inviting you. All that's required is one calm step forward. Walk through it without apology, without guilt, without waiting for permission. You belong there. You've always belonged there. The only difference now is that you believe it. And if you need a little humor to keep your ego in check, remember this: even the Buddha had to eat. Enlightenment didn't pay the rent, but it made the rice taste better. What that means for you is simple: spiritual maturity doesn't cancel ambition, it purifies it. You can still chase your dreams, just do it with breath instead of panic. As the Buddha once said, what you are is what you have been. What you will be is what you do now. The past was training, the future is choreography, and this present moment is rehearsal for your next masterpiece. You're choosing ease over effort, clarity over chaos, and faith over fear. And that, in its simplest form, is the real millionaire mindset. Because true wealth isn't a bank balance, it's the serenity of knowing you're exactly where you're meant to be, doing exactly what you're meant to do, with nothing to prove and everything to express. So breathe, Aries. This isn't the end of a chapter, it's the soft beginning of a life lived in alignment. Your reflection isn't fighting you anymore, it's finally on your side. Momentum has always been your mother tongue, Aries. When you move, the universe tends to jog alongside you, sometimes out of admiration, sometimes out of sheer necessity to keep up. But the message of this season isn't about acceleration, it's about precision. It's about learning the art of motion with awareness, the paradoxical grace of stillness inside movement. You've already mastered the sprint. You know how to chase, how to conquer, how to force doors open through sheer willpower. But October's rhythm demands something more refined, a quieter power, a conscious stride rather than a headlong rush. Imagine the difference between running through a storm and learning to dance with the wind. That's your assignment now. You are shifting from being the warrior who charges ahead to the sage who moves only when the ground itself hums yes. In the language of astrology, this is the moment Mars energy evolves. No longer reckless, no longer reactive, it becomes responsive. Your fire starts to listen. You begin to sense the subtle cues that used to be drowned out by the noise of urgency, the instinctive pause before an email you shouldn't send, the hesitation that isn't fear but wisdom, the quiet pull toward what's truly aligned instead of what's merely available. Acting from intuition instead of anxiety is not a loss of passion, it's the upgrade of it. It's the difference between lighting a match and tending a flame. When you learn to act from this inner clarity, the universe doesn't need to chase after you with signs, it simply syncs with you. You don't need to chase your destiny anymore, you are magnetic to it. You were born with that rare combination of courage and charisma that makes things orbit around your energy. The chosen ones, as I like to call them, don't sprint toward miracles, they prepare space for them. They clear the clutter of expectation, they let silence breathe, and they trust that what is meant for them will not need to be hunted. So instead of shouting your intentions into the void, try whispering them into a candle flame. That's how Aries casts real spells, through presence, not panic. Let me make a small confession, drawn from years of observation and an unhealthy number of birth charts. Every time I've seen an Aries finally slow down, truly slow down, without guilt or twitching, something miraculous unfolds. The right email lands. The opportunity that seemed impossible clicks into place. The person you thought had forgotten you suddenly reaches out. And it's never because you pushed harder, it's because you finally stopped pushing. Your magic was never in your motion, it was in your alignment. You've spent so long proving your worth through velocity that you forgot stillness has a gravity of its own. Vibration, not velocity, is the new currency of your success. The universe doesn't measure effort in miles per hour, it measures coherence, resonance, frequency. And here's the irony every Aries secretly hates to admit, your power multiplies when you pause. The moment you stop trying to prove that you deserve it all, life rushes in to prove it for you. Stillness is not stagnation, it's strategy. Even the fire rests between sparks. The candle doesn't burn brighter by screaming at the wax. And yet, in your heart, you've always known this. Every time you've had a breakthrough, it came after surrender, not struggle. The mind panics, but the soul plans. By the time the sun sets on October 19th, the cosmic window begins to close, but your momentum, your true, aligned momentum continues. The energy doesn't vanish, it lingers, patient, waiting for one simple response from you: will you act? And by act, I don't mean tearing up your schedule, quitting your job, or announcing to the internet that you've been reborn. The universe doesn't need theatrics. Sometimes the most powerful act is a single, quiet yes. A text you've been too proud to send. A truth you've been too afraid to speak. A small but honest beginning that signals to existence, I'm ready. Think of it like tying the final golden thread in the tapestry of this year's growth. Every lesson, courage, patience, intuition, self-worth has been a strand in the design. The final stitch is not grand, it's deliberate. It's your decision. It's the moment when you stop admiring the work and claim it as your own. So write the words, say them out loud, or whisper them into your morning coffee if you need ritual to make it real. I claim my sacred abundance. I move in rhythm with my truth. It doesn't matter how dramatic it feels, what matters is that it's sincere. Because sincerity changes your frequency faster than effort ever could. Words, after all, are energy in transit. When spoken from clarity, they shift the entire field around you. They tell destiny, you can find me now. This is how momentum truly works, not through constant movement, but through energetic availability. You're not chasing anymore, you're aligning. You're not commanding the universe, you're conversing with it. So let October end not with exhaustion, but with composure. Sit in that rare and sacred confidence that no longer needs to be loud. You've built enough, fought enough, proven enough. Now you simply become enough. The fire doesn't always roar. Sometimes it listens, flickering steady, waiting for the next sacred wind to guide its direction. And when it moves again, it will not be from fear or impatience, it will be from mastery. Because at last, Aries, you've learned the rarest form of movement, to go nowhere and still arrive. Before you go drafting blueprints for an empire, Aries, let's agree on one sensible truth. Spiritual growth doesn't require you to shave your head, switch to whispering, and quote medieval mystics while sipping ceremonial tea at sunrise. You're still the Zodiac's fire starter, the person who walks into an ordinary Tuesday and turns it into a planning session for destiny, and yes, occasionally an argument worth having because you care about getting the point right, not just getting it over with. So let's put that heat to honest use and start with a little reflective humor. The same impatience you judge in yourself is actually evidence of love, a fierce wish for things to happen while they still matter, and if you can grin at that impulse instead of wrestling it, you'll notice what the wise notice. Even divine timing sometimes borrows your tempo and shows up a touch early, a touch loud, and somehow perfectly on time. This is the advanced class where the chosen ones of action learn the softest power in the room, the lesson that a fire need not roar to warm a village, that consistency can be thunderless and still change the weather, that momentum born of grounded presence outperforms the most glamorous sprint, and yes, that your fiercest breakthroughs arrive not when you try to be someone holier than human, but when you let your humanity breathe. So take a breath and feel how the rhythm beneath your restlessness has been tuning itself for days, weeks, months, guiding you toward a return rather than a makeover, because the point of this journey was never to become unrecognizable, it was to remember the version of you that existed before fear masqueraded as logic, before you were told softness cancels strength, before you learned to hide your tenderness behind witty retorts and busy calendars. And when you remember that version, you stop forcing doors and start hearing hinges. You stop bargaining with fate and start listening to your own yes, which is the only durable compass I've ever found in Aries charts or in life. Over the next stretch of October, don't look for abundance to crash in like a marching band. Listen for it the way you'd hear a refrigerator at midnight after the house quiets down, a steady hum of sufficiency that wants acknowledgement more than applause. And when connection knocks, it may not kick the door, it may tap like a friend who already has a key, so choose to open without the old theater of suspicion. And when confidence arrives, it won't strut in borrowed clothes, it will take its seat like it's lived there for years, because it has, because what you're approaching isn't a costume change but a homecoming. You are not chasing, you are attracting, you are not proving, you are embodying. And if you want a ritual that works outside of hashtags and hype, meet your own eyes in a quiet mirror tonight and speak as if the room itself were a witness. Say, I am ready for my sacred abundance. I am the fire that builds, not burns, and then walk away as if you'd signed a contract, because you have, not with some distant sky but with the most reliable partner you'll ever have, your own attentive awareness. Buddhism would call that right view married to right effort. Psychology would call it secure self-concept shaping behavior, and a novelist would simply call it the moment the protagonist stops begging the plot to be kind and starts writing the next scene. And while we're here, give yourself permission to enjoy your life without apologizing to the committee of imagined critics, because pleasure is not an enemy of purpose, It's a renewable fuel for it. Go taste the food while it's hot, return the text that makes you smile, choose the walk that loosens your thinking, say yes to the invitation that feels suspiciously like relief, spend 1 honest hour on the project that keeps lighting up your mind at traffic lights, and if a joke wants to join the conversation, let it, because lightness keeps the heart agile. And an agile heart makes better choices. If you're wondering how to sustain this new steadiness once the calendar flips,